Is Mankey, and welcome back to another episode of Death of a Team. This is the sixth episode, and we are going back to Korea, part of our rotation, and look at a team that is pretty much the most underrated, but yet successful team in all of Korea. Well, actually, less successful, but pretty much underrated in most sense. And that is the dominant team of Najin Sword slash Najin Black Sword. Actually, you want to call it modern day. Let's call it Najin Back Sword. But let's just go with a quick history. This org was created in May 30th, 2012 by the Najin Sword, or the Najin Shield Captain Monku, with the help of the Najin Company, which is a supplier of marine values. They also create Najin Shield, but we're not going to go dive in that story. Probably a two-parter, of course. We're focusing on Najin Sword. He and Malrock, Song, Kane, Vermeer would co-reach the coach-worthy starting foundations of a team. Now, they didn't start the LCK right away. Actually, there was no LCK at the time. This was 2013, which means it was Champions Korea, and it was one of the most hardest tournaments to even win. I mean, some people even say that winning the Korea Championships was way harder than winning Worlds in most cases. And they didn't start it right away. They decided to play in an online tournament, winning PSW Aries 3-0 back in 2012. Now, after that 2012 performance, in which they got promoted, they decided to, you know what, let's just switch things up. Malruk and Vermeer, you are just not good enough to carry us over. So watch and troll Kim, which, by the way, later on to be one of the best spot lane players of all time in Prey, decided to play in both the jungle and the bot. Oh, wait, we got two bot laners? Well, unfortunately, Kane, you have to play support. Yeah, that sucks. Anyways, the format was different back then. This was a best of two match. Ugh, Jesus, best of two? Oh, God. And this is, of course, a point system. You get a 2-0 result, you get 3 points. If you get a 1-1 result, you get 1 point each. It's weird and convoluted, but then again, it's the early days of leagues, so who am I care? They were drawn in Group B alongside MVP Blue, Azubu Blaze, CJ Entis, and KT Rolster Bullets. And I will tell you what, they have god tier names on these teams. God tier. You could just the Hall of Fame list from all these teams will be like an entire scroll rolling out, and it's like, my God. And they finished with a respectable 3, 1, and 2, and 10 points, which is good enough for third place and qualify for the playoffs, in which they knock off the following teams: MVP White 3-0, and then in a this is where the craziness of these entire Korea champions come from. They decided to not play not just one best of three match, but two best of three matches. And if that best of three matches are tied, there'll be a single match. I'm not kidding. You go look it up. That they have one best of three matchup, and then another best of three matches. If you win both best of three matches, you will be in the finals. Like, that thing is mind blowing even today's standards. And they destroy KT roster bullets in an emphatic fashion. 3-1 in the first game, 3-0 in the second game, and they qualify for the finals to face Azubu Frost. Now you're thinking to yourself, Akeem, the Azubu Frost, what team? Why am I familiar with this team? First of all, that will come up later, way later, I promise. Secondly, this team was stacked. Absolutely stacked. Like, they got Cloud Templar, Rapid Star, and the guy who made Thresh look like an absolute Giga Chat at the time, in Mr. Mad Life. And oh, by the way, a year ago, they lost to the Taipei Assassins in the World's Finals. So they made it to like the World's Finals a year prior. So you got a non-gym sword team with a bunch of okay-ish players, and one went on to be a legend, but still a young player at the time, to face it off against a team with stacked, incredible Korean stars. Like, I'll tell you one thing. If you're a betting person who's betting that game, of course, back in, let's say 2013, you would say, like, ain't no way. Ain't no way that Azubu Frost were to lose to a team called Najim Sword, of course. That is impossible even in today's standards. And lo and behold, not only they beat the champions, they destroyed them 3-0, and it was not even close. Listen, I would love to tell you all the details, of course, but that'd be a waste of everybody's time, of course. And I gotta be a little bit cranky, of course, about come tomorrow morning by the time this whole thing is coming out. So can't do that, man. So now here's where the difficulty really elevates. If you thought, winter 2013 was hard and difficult, okay, I'm just mixing up words. If you thought 2013 was brutal, 2013 spring, oh boy, let's just say it is a absolute death throw of an entire LCK. You're talking about bedlam of legends in this group. Now, as the champions, of course, Najin Sora, they decided to be plucked in Group A Spring, where they had to face off against the KT Arrows, the KT Roster Arrows with Kakao playing, MVP Ozone with Donde and Mata, all right, CJ Entus Blades with Captain Jack and Ambition, MVP Blue with Deft and Easy Hoon, and SK Telecom T12 with Impact, Baggy, and Piglet, and a rookie who just, he's just a washed up mid laner rookie we just picked up from, our academy team. His name is Faker, so he'll be, I don't know, probably a wash the next 3 to 4 years, I guess. And to say that this group was difficult at the time would be an understatement. Like, I just name you the names. I mean, if this was today's League of Legends, you would have looked at these names and saying, yeah, you ain't no chance. Imagine if like D and Supers would be played in that group. I mean, they would not even win a game against these players. In their prime, of course. They made it, of course, which is incredible, and they made it with a 1-2-2 score line and 5 points. One above the KT Roster era and the MVP Blue team, which is great. That's incredible, a miracle on itself. The playoffs were unfortunately not that kind, as they got absolutely beaten by not Enter's Blaze, but CJ Frost. 3-1 in the quarterfinals, and their title has to be relinquished. So that sucks. So we're into 2013. A lot of changes had to be made. Summer, of course, 2013 is where so many things going on with that team. First, Najin Sword were dead. Enter Najin Black Sword. And the second is Monku, the guy who was the engineer behind his entire team, of course. And the top laner for their championship run and their success, he's out. And Expression comes in. Najin joining as a jungler to be switched as a mid. So Expression, I think Song is still there. I'm not sure. I didn't look up. But Makuza, it will be the coach of this team. And all of this was taking place from June 21st to August 9th. This was taking place the entire summer. It's wild. It's wild off the courts. Now in summer, they did something so fascinating, so incredible that we in the League of Legends community would have cried about. They were undefeated. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, undefeated, and they were probably the best team in all of Korea. Look at that. 3 times. 0-3, 0-3. They have not lost a single game, and that is the most incredible stat ever. Oh, what's that? Oh, they didn't win a single game. Well, sorry, that is. I'm sorry, man, but the 3 times are great, but unfortunately, it did not even get you to the playoffs. So, yeah, them's the breaks. The good news about all of this is because of their incredible winter performance and the accumulation of all the circus points, which is at the time was a thing. There was no playoffs to get to your international event. There was nothing. It's just how you do in each different split. And if you get enough points in each different split, you get to qualify for the biggest international League of Legends tournament of all time, which is Worlds. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what Najin Black Sword are going. They have finally made it. Now, the format was a little bit different at the time. Since they were the number one seeded team in Korea, they decided to skip the groups altogether and go straight to the knockout stage, which means straight into the quarterfinals. From the group stage rumblings, of course, they were drawn against Gambit Gaming, which, by the way, has some of the members of that incredible Moscow 5 team that were one of the best teams in the world at the time, challenging Korea and all kinds of stuff until the FBI shows up. Yeah, literally, that happened. And they beat them 2-1, which sets up an incredible date with the mighty SKT1 and that incredible lineup that I mentioned, and a rookie faker that is no longer washed, but absolutely looking like the inklings of one of the best mid laners and the best players of all time. But this was like 2013. Nobody knew how good he was. And this was an absolute banger. This was an absolute banger. I think you could say that this was 2013's match of the year by a country mile. The fact that this incredible this Najin Sword team managed to battle SKT1 to NL for the entire series is incredible. It's incredible. But unfortunately, they lost 3-2 to SKT1. The SKT1 team went on to win the first World Championships, and we all knew how this story goes. But unfortunately for Najim Sword, their story is pretty much ended in a whimper, not a banger. They have to immediately go into a winter split. Not you did, but listen, back then it's like, oh, welcome. Okay, yeah, Worlds, great. We just made it to Worlds, incredible enough. Now it's just like sit back, relax, just enjoy a meal, spend time with family. Oh, wait, we have to play in winter again? Oh, why? Yeah, and it did not help. 0-2-1, 2 ties and a single defeat, and they were below Incredible Miracle second, Samsung Blue, and the KT All-Star Bullets. I can bet you some of the names right there were even legendary, but the fact you didn't get a single win. In fact, you have now, in the last 2 splits, go 0-5-1. 0-5-1. Like, Christ, that is just awful, and even the best of 2 standings, of course. So, out goes, expression. Out goes Watch, out goes Winged, and out goes Peng. And in came Top Lulu, which is later changed to Limit, Helios with Accent as the substitute in the jungle. And that took place from the 4th to the 11th of 2014. Now, here's the good news, ladies and gentlemen. They got a win. Well done, ladies and gentlemen. Well done. You finally get a best of 2 win. The sad part about it is you're going 1-1-1, 4 points, and no playoffs. So the last 3 splits, you have 1 win, 6 ties, and 2 defeats. 1 win in the last 3 splits. That is just god awful, of course. So more changes have to be made because why the frick not? Limit, Helios, 90, Praise, Simsung So, their coach, get out of here. We don't need you bums. We got Leopard, who's later named to Duke, who went on to, play for T1 that one time. That's true. Lee, Koro, and Oak, with Song being the head coach, the former player now being head coach, you guys are all in. And now, after all these years, ladies and gentlemen, they have finally made the playoffs over the mighty favorites, KT Bullets. Yeah, KT Bullets was everybody's cup of tea when they're trying to win the whole thing because of some of the players they have and all kinds of stuff. They over Jin Air Falcons and their sister teams, Nonshin Shield, in which they draw in the bracket and face off against the KT Arrows team. Now, I think Monte Cristo, the historian in terms of LCK and all that jazz, said it best that KT Bullets were an incredible team, KT Arrows was a messy team. And many people will look at this Najin Sword lineup and thinking, they should easily beat KT, right? They should easily beat KT. Yeah, they did not. The scrappy underdog KT Arrows team won that series 3-2. Then another one 3-2. And then the final 3-2 to win the whole damn title. Yeah, congratulations. You just allowed a really crappy KT Arrows team to win the whole tournament. And unfortunately, I'm afraid I have some even more bad news. Now, you'll notice that I mentioned the Najin sword and the Najin shield in the same breath. Because that was at the time where sister teams, which include the Incredible Miracle 2, the Samsung Blue and the Samsung Ozone, KT Rollstar Bullets and Arrows, those kind of teams. Those were allowed way back when, in the ye old days of League, of course, when it was allowed, of course. And of course, that's the reason being is that these switching lineups, bringing more competition, of course, scrimming with each other, those kind of stuff. It was, back then, legal to be extent. And then KESPA stepped in. The Korea Esports Association, which, of course, KESPA, which is like the real deal when it comes to like Korean esports. And like they take Korean esports like it's gospel, of course. And they see all of this chaos going on, and they decided, we ain't doing that. Along with a lot of format changes, and then change the name to the LCK, of course, which is years later. They decided that semi-professional teams cannot be allowed in the LCK, which means, sadly, only one of these teams will have to leave. And here's a spoiler alert, both of them left. Yeah, both of them. And with all of that chaos and with all of that things, players and teams will go left, right, and center, all kind of stuff. And then in December 2nd of that same year, the whole team disbands. Not before they won the NLB Summer, which is a newly made tournament by the KESPA Cup, of course, which is one of those academy tournaments, which, develop players and all kinds of stuff. But by the time KESPA made the announcement of the semi-professional teams being killed, that was pretty much the death knell. In fact, that was probably the reason why Najim's Black Sword were dead, despite the fact they have a 60% approximate, win rate, of course. And that is literally the end of Najin Black Sword / Najin Sword. I mean, a short history, of course, nothing too special. This team is, the only thing we remember by is being challenging the great SKT1 at the peak of their powers. Well, not fully peak of the powers, but challenging the team that went on to go on to become one of the greatest ever teams in League of Legends history. And they would have won this series. They would have faced Starhorn. They wouldn't won the Worlds, and we don't know what the history of League of Legends would it be like. It would have been a different story altogether. Imagine if Najin Sword were to win that series and win Worlds. Faker would never be remembered. He will be one of those rookies that are bombed, and he will fall off, of course. And you can say that lots of LCK history or lots of Korea history would have changed by this one series. And the sad part about it, we never get to see that happening. But it is one of those butterfly effect moments that you could happen in any League of Legends or any game, of course. And the fact that it didn't happen just speaks volume of how important that series was. And even though the later stages were kind of like, it is what it is, they fell off the map, which is fine. If you have the time, please go watch the Worlds 2014 semifinals between these two teams. It was Korea's at their finest, of course, with history and the fact that we see legends coming through. It's a must watch for anybody else. And while the beginning was kind of rough, although it brings you success, of course, winning their only LCK title at the time, and it was stacked with all the legends and all kinds of stuff, and the name change, and the fact they actually made it here and nearly gave them a business, and despite the ending was bad, to say that this was the peak of their powers is incredible. It's incredible. And sadly, it's only KESPA that pretty much killed him. Well, maybe Riot, but mostly KESPA in their case. And maybe Riot. So anyways, thank you all for watching this episode of Death of a Team. It has been an honor serving you. We're close to 55 subscribers, or by the time this thing will be out, it'll be 55 subscribers. So anyways, thank you all for watching. Like, comment, subscribe for this video, and I will see you all next